Today we're still on the mental body and thinking about our thoughts and how do we clear them. That's something that is kind of a buzzword now. But the mind is both revered and it's revolted against. And I could see how the mental body could be confusing because we hear things like mind over matter and think and grow rich, great things. But we also hear it's all in your mind, it's all in your head, or your thoughts can trick you. So what is the truth? Well, both. It is so important to learn about all four bodies within us, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, as well as the physical body, because each of these play a different role in our experiencing of our life, our experience. Two people can have the same thought and have very different emotions tied to that thought. Two people can hear a word and have very different sensations arise within their body. But when we start to separate out our thoughts and feelings, our emotions, and the meaning in our lives, our world becomes a lot safer. And I really mean it. When we begin to understand ourselves, the world is more predictable and it feels more stable. Too much of our unconscious mind is spent preparing for another shoe to drop or preventing us from being what we might call found out. The work of this life is as much about learning to receive and hold the greatness of who we are as it is to learn to give it to others. That's really important. One of the ways we do this is to examine the thoughts that rule our lives, both good and bad. Many times the negative thoughts are not our own, but actually beliefs in someone else's thoughts that we have agreed to. Leonardo da Vinci has said all of our knowledge has its origins in our perceptions. Once we examine these thoughts, the beliefs, or the perceptions, as Da Vinci calls them, they can be shifted to more supportive ones. And when we examine our good thoughts, they can begin to grow and expand. So it's a win-win. I have noticed that one of the thoughts disintegrating our humanity today is the us and them mentality. See how it's a mental body issue, mentality. I have a unique perspective on these kinds of things. One of the traumas in my life was as a child. I was the extra prize at the end of the family of 7, a little caboose years after. My parents put me in the middle of their feelings of scarcity toward one another. And a few sentences will never do justice to how this trauma painted my world negatively. But it did give me empathy for others' hurts. It provided me something to overcome in life. And it helped me develop a superpower of being able to see two sides of things because I was in the middle. So I hope to share that superpower here with this us and them mentality. So on the us side, we have beliefs, ways of doing things, likes and dislikes, all based on our negative and positive thoughts about the issues and how things work and how those things impact us. We tend to live and interact with people who share those same thoughts. And this formula is exactly the same for the them side of the equation. Remember how I said before that we put a lot of energy into preparing for that other shoe to drop. When opposing ideas hit us, it feels like a real life threat, like dangerous. It can feel like a 100-pound shoe just dropped right on our toe. And we don't like it. We resisted it, and it becomes really easy in this state of resistance to create a narrative that supports our way of things and denounces the other's way. But it makes sense. There's a reason for it. But if we don't stop and notice when this happens, then it helps to create the systematic way we function as a people. This is key. Understanding systematic versus organized is really important. This is a really important piece that my superpower picks up on. It gets us into trouble. Because when we are the accused, let's say racism, exclusion, and mistreatment, being wrong, we see it from the perspective of it's happening to us on purpose or it's organized. And we reject the idea of not giving thought to how it could be a systematic problem, meaning there is not a specific stop and start to the issue, even though it exists. We see and recognize our powerlessness because we weren't in on the decision. There was no decision to create it. No one really created it. And racism is a good example here. As a white woman, I have never been taught to hate or have a bias against anyone of another race. I haven't. Yet, my brothers and sisters of different shades are telling me over and over their stories of pain and suffering. And the statistics agree. So if my reaction might be based on knowing it was not created, it's not on purpose, it's not an organized perspective. So maybe I dismiss it when the problem is actually systematic, meaning it's not the big things. It's often the very, very small, unnoticed things that become systematic. When we are the accusers, it is more common to believe things are happening to us in an organized, deliberate way. We feel like everyone's doing it. They all think the same way. The others desire to hurt us and they want us to feel bad. We see it as this organized way. The fight between the systematic versus the organized impacts our thinking in a big way. And we begin to create beliefs from these thoughts. So what's the fix? The movie A Beautiful Mind's main character, real life character, John Nash, and it's a true story, based on a true story. And next week I'm going to be talking about that movie and how it talks and we can learn about the mental body. He said the only thing greater than the power of the mind is the courage of the heart. The fix is empathy, both for ourselves, then given freely to others. I am trained in HeartCentered Therapy, and its theory is that the heart has a wisdom that we can tap into. In a session, we can literally ask the heart, not the organ, but the energy of the heart, for answers to our why and whens our thoughts and beliefs were formed. It is an amazing process. And like my dear friend and the co-owner of the Wholeness Network, Robin Johnson, she's also known as the Heart Whisperer. She teaches all about the heart, and something she says is the heart can only see through the eyes of compassion. And I agree, because the heart space is the center of the spiritual body, and it sees things from a higher perspective and at its best. And it's worth repeating that the compassion is held first for yourself, and then we have the ability and we are able and maybe willing to hold the space for another. When we ask ourselves questions and reflect about why we do the things we do and why we feel the way we feel, we can begin to understand our thinking and vice versa. Our thoughts do create our lives, and so it is important to go deeper into their origins. All four bodies actually aid in this, but the mental body, with its access to logic, combined with an expansive creative space, it can be really useful in reassessing things and giving it many perspectives and open up the possibilities. The mental body has that unique way of doing that. But first, it might need healing. Did you know that trauma, both traumatic things that happened and the trauma of things that didn't happen, actually have a way of changing the brain and how the brain develops? Luckily, our brain is plastic and we can be healed. But until we get on the path to healing, our mental body is working with less ability to support us, to help us.